Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 6th installment of the Strive for Legacy podcast. It's been a little bit, but even with the Lakers not playing, it's been one of the more exciting playoffs in recent times. Even like I said, without the Lakers, I mean it's an amazing feeling to see teams shoot the three, have decent centers. I mean, it's not as fun as the Lakers still being here, but it's quite fascinating to see things that the Lakers just didn't do. But something that was a little a little funny coming into this podcast, it was a super dry time. You got the rumors with the stars, just Lakers news with like the stars, and just coming here, the trade talks, Kuzma, your weekly Kuzma news. And I texted Dolos, or DM'd him, and was like, what are we going to talk about for the Lakers other than Kemba and Ben Simmons? And then once we got to today, I mean, for probably you can book it, the most random news for the Lakers in the whole offseason was Alex Caruso getting arrested. I'm still
free AC.
I'm still confused as whether that's funny or sad, but it was. I literally texted him, "Did you see the Caruso news?" And he's like, "Oh." I'd assume he was like, "Oh, did he get an extension or something?" And no, the guy got arrested in Texas for his medicinal use. I'll say that much. But I'm assuming, yeah, he is out on bail and all of that. So it's not like there's some dire, consequences coming out of that. It was just one of the more like, well, there's some news, but like it's not the Caruso news we wanted, but it is Caruso news, I guess. But before we get into the Lakers stuff, like I've said, there's not really that much to talk about, just your usual rumors here and there. We did witness quite the game yesterday as we recorded it with the Suns, who, as we all know, did beat us. Not in 4 like the Nuggets, just in 6, so it's not that iconic. But we did witness that, and like the playoffs have been great. And we just wanted to speak on it a little more because we like to start off with a little more action than Kemba and Ben Simmons. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Dolos. What have you thought about the playoffs since the last time? It's been 2 weeks since the last time we recorded?
I don't think it's been that long. I think we maybe recorded a bit about a week ago. But yeah, it has been long enough that the second round has already concluded. Just for thoughts on that, very surprised by the Sixers. I had faith in them. They disappointed me as a team. Ben Simmons he definitely disappointed me as a player. And, I'm someone who had a lot of stock in Ben Simmons, and that is almost worthless now. So thanks for that. As far as the other series, Milwaukee winning was kind of a surprise to me. That was a series it really felt like they didn't deserve to win. Like, you were blowing your chances against the Nets with James Harden missing. Like, they put 50 on you in that game too. I'm not rooting for the Nets. Like, I'm obviously anti-Nets, but the Bucks, I didn't think it was possible to win a 7-game series and for me to lose confidence in a team. Like, my opinion on the Bucks was so high coming off that sweep of the Heat. I'm like, okay, look, they're serious. They've made the adjustments they need to. I think they're going to be a better team. I was actually pretty excited for this Brooklyn matchup. Then Harden goes down. And I'm like, okay, the Bucks probably have this wrapped up. Now with the injuries, and they allow it just to become way more of a fight than it needed to be. So I don't feel great about the Bucks, but at least kind of all the most difficult opponents are out of the way, in my opinion. So they're my team that I'm pushing for to make it all the way, I guess.
Yeah, I had an initial Nets prediction to make it to the finals a long time back. I even made a $20 bet with someone that they would make the finals, but thankfully, as many of you should do with your bets, make some clauses. And I did put a clause that if Harden or KD got injured, then that the deal wouldn't be done. And I mean, it's kind of awkward because Harden was technically injured, but he kind of came back. But yeah, I'm not losing $20, which is okay. But $20 would have been great regardless. But it is what it is. I I mean, I thought it was a good series. It's just super weird that like one game you're getting blown out by 50 and somehow you win the series. That's pretty wild stat to me. But the Nets injuries have been just what it is for a lot of teams, and it's just kind of like the playoffs of fruition, if that's the word, where the healthiest team usually wins. Although we're seeing a lot of curveballs with Chris Paul and Kawhi Leonard and a lot of that. As far as the Hawks and the Sixers series, I'm like a sneaky Hawks supporter, not a fan, but like a supporter, because I had a ridiculous Trae Young take where I thought even repeating it, like it could still happen, but I had Trae Young as MVP before the season, and I was called a madman, right? And technically he didn't win MVP, but the chances of him winning MVP plus finals, you just got to insert the finals a little bit before the MVP, is still possible. So that's mainly the reason I just like the Hawks, I guess, also because I just like how their roster is constructed, and I just like how they're the underdog mentality. I do appreciate that from that.
Yeah, this is a Hawks appreciation podcast. I am shocked that they beat Philly, but I've got a lot of love for that team. Trae Young is phenomenal. I love how much of an entertainer he is, because not only is he dropping buckets out there, the trolling that he does as well, taking a bow on your team, like doing the push-ups. I love that antagonistic stuff. So I'm all for it. Like Kevin Huerter, Kayvon, as the Hawks like to call him, John Collins, like they've got really good, interesting players over there. Cam Reddish, like DeAndre Hunter, who's not even available for them right now. So if you haven't been watching the Hawks, well, it's the playoffs, so you must be watching the Hawks. But this is a team you should be tuning into during the regular season as well.
Yeah, I saw a lot of comparisons where they were like, if the 2013 Warriors beat the Spurs. And, I mean, certainly the players are a little different, just because we don't know the potential of the young stars on it. But I do, like I said, I do like the roster construction. At some point, I would love to see Chris Dunn at least play 1 minute. I don't know where he went. He's been injured for, like, the past 4 years or something. But, yeah, that's been awesome to see. Like you said, the antagonistic role that Trae has been playing has been awesome, not only for Hawks fans, but just for, like, regular NBA fans that aren't really Hawks fans like us, and it's been very entertaining to see. And you don't really see people close out series consecutively in the Garden and in Philly. That's like two of the more hostile places in American sports. So the fact that he did that back to back, and he did the bow, he's shushing the crowd, and the best part about it is he's backing it up. So a villain that can back it up is something to deal with for sure. And I think he's definitely made a staple for himself, and I'm super excited about the Hawks. The Hawks and the Bucks, I mean, just for like the meme, I would love to root for the Hawks, and maybe in 7 I could see that happening. But I mean, at least there's a chance, because the Bucks can self-destruct quite easily, and we saw that. I just don't know if they're gonna have such a self-destruction as the Sixers had. I think that'd be pretty hard to do. And I have no idea who's guarding Giannis. I mean, Capella's probably the best choice, but he's going to be eating for sure. And yeah, I think it's just very exciting. In the Western side, the Suns are up 2-0 at this moment. Oh, let me get on my Suns tangent. So the Suns, I feel like it's a little sacrilegious to root really hard for a team that beat you in the first round. But like I said, even when they were in the series against them, I really, really, really like this Suns team, mainly because of the people on the team with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, little Cameron Payne love, I guess, maybe. I'm a little hesitant on that, but Cam Payne, he's playing out of his mind. He had like 29 and 8 in a Western Conference Finals when like 2 years ago he was in China, literally, not even as like a meme, but he was literally in China and playing for he was out of the league basically, but it's cool to see that. The Clippers. Oh, let me. So, I don't know if Dolos has expressed this, but he hasn't even made it. He hasn't hid the fact that he's rooting for the Clippers, and not even like as a joke, but like it's a serious rooting, and
very much so.
I have an issue with it as far as I would only root for the Clippers for the theory that Dolos came up with, where we can get into the parade theory, which is the only reason I would even get even close to supporting them. But do you want to explain your parade theory? I'll let you explain your parade theory.
Yes, I'm gonna go off on my little rant here, because for one, I kind of get your whole point. Like, I like the Suns. I do. They're a really cool team. I'm a fan of Devin Booker, but at the same time, that's the team that just knocked us out the playoffs. So, no offense to them, I'm feeling salty about that. I don't want to see them win the title. So, that's part of what's playing into this. But at the same time, there's something about Lakers fans that really bothers me with this relationship they have with the Clippers, because the Clippers are not a rival, like not at all, not close, because the Lakers are a franchise, a dynasty franchise with 17 titles. The Clippers are making their first ever Western Conference Finals appearance. Like, this is not a team that we need to worry about getting to our level. Even if they're good right now in the short term, like, it's not like this franchise is anything, so these Clippers fans have literally been miserable for a year. They've had the most racist owner in sports. They've been cursed and blown multiple 3-1 leads. Marquee free agents that they get injured. Like, that's the history of this team. I just don't see really a reason to, like, even care what they do or if they're successful. Like, this has just been a losing team for their entire existence. And just because of the fact they're in the same city as the Lakers, I think a lot of Laker fans have been, particularly in this playoffs, have been a bit insecure about the Clippers. Like, I get it last season. I was totally with trolling the Clippers last season. They got, like, a really big head, LA our way, like, this is Kawhi's playground, all of that stuff. But they then blew a 3-1 lead in the playoffs and were totally humbled by it. Like, we haven't heard any quotes from the Clippers that, really make me want to react, like, as if this is a feud, or as if will never be a battle for LA. Like, it will always be a Lakers town. So I just kind of think that we've been talking about the Clippers as if they're they're the little brother franchise.
Yes.
I think it's time we kind of start treating them that way. Like, this is their first Western Conference Finals. At a certain point, it's like, okay, well, the talk is the talk. The rivalry is the rivalry. But congrats, first Western Conference Finals. Like, cool. Like, we have 17 titles. Congrats on your first Western Conference Finals. On top of that, my whole parade thing comes into account. And, like, part of my thinking with that is because I'm from Chicago. And not that I'm a baseball fan, but Chicago has two baseball teams, the Cubs, who are more like the North Side team, and the White Sox, who are like the South Side team. And because I'm someone who moved from the North to the South, like, I kind of have friends who are on both sides of that baseball feud and dynasty. And I think there's more legitimate reasons for that to be a feud between Cubs and Sox. But at the same time, when the Cubs won the World Series a few years ago, the parade that was in Chicago, like, I guarantee there were people from the South Side there. Like, and it wasn't even it was just about, like, hey, our city is champions. Like, we won a title. And this would not be the way Lakers fans want it, but back-to-back years of titles in LA could be pretty cool. And, a joint Lakers-Clippers parade, like, just taking over their parade and celebrating the 2020 team is really more so my idea. But, like, I just think it'd be pretty cool, and I don't think there's really a reason to hate on a franchise that hasn't really had any meaningful success in 50 years.
I mean, your neutral stance, gonna be honest, a little boring, and
it's just punching down. I have no
a dead horse.
We have no reason to punch down on the Clippers. Like, I'm rooting against the Celtics. They have 17 titles like us. I want to make sure they're not making ground on that. Like, the Clippers don't even have a conference finals appearance till now. Like, why am I so worried about what they're doing?
Pettiness. Pettiness. PETT. Iness. I'm glad I spelled that right. Just flat up. I'm going to participate in that. You don't have to. You can be the diplomat of the Lakers bunch, but I am going to actively root against the Clippers no matter what, just because I'm brainwashed and I'm brainwashed in Lakers culture, but I don't care. I like if you're going to be the bully big brother, sure, maybe one applause here and there if your little brother does something cool. Sure. I mean, I thought you were going to be a little more aggressive with your parade theory, because I personally interpret it as if the Clippers do win and they hold a parade, sure, all 8 Clippers fans are going to be there, but the Lakers fans, I would envision absolutely just crashing that party and taking it as their own because they didn't get a parade last year.
Right, yeah, rightfully so. If the Clippers win the title, the Lakers fans should be swarming that parade and making this about the 2020 team. I'm just saying, I don't have the energy to hate against the Clippers. I'm going to root for them in this series because they're against the team that beat us. And I have a strong point about that. I'm more so confused at Lakers fans rooting for the Suns who knocked us out. Do you understand what will happen if the Phoenix Suns are to go on and win a title after this?
We look better. We get part of that. What do you mean we look better if they win?
I see your point about it looks better to have lost to the eventual champion than it does to just some team that flamed out in the second round. But to be honest with you, I don't want to see highlight packages of the Suns beating us in the first round as they celebrate that title. Imagine it. I'm gonna set the scene for you. And the Lakers
I'm
fans
loving
listen
this.
to this.
I as sacrilegious as it is, I'm loving seeing Drummond get posterized in this film.
In
movie.
10 years, as the Suns are looking back down memory lane of their first franchise title, I think this is their first franchise title.
It will be.
We're going to have to see a bunch of those Lakers plays. We're going to have to see Jay Crowder salsa dancing on our team. I'm not interested in that.
I love it.
So
I love the pettiness.
No, Phoenix deserved it. They deserve to completely go at us. We clown them. I think it's only fair. That's sports. But at the same time, I don't want to see that as a highlight reel package for the next 10 years as the Suns celebrate their title. Let's end this fun little trip and run for them now. And, this will still be a moment in Suns history. I'd rather it just be a moment in Suns history and not a moment in their title run that they get to play back and throw in our face for years. I'm cool on that.
I guess that's just a random agree to disagree moment, which is absolutely non-Laker related. It's just more of I don't know. I just can't root for the Clippers no matter what. They're the number one team that if they move to Seattle, then maybe I'll start to like them. But I don't know. It's a lot of antics, and I mean, probably I'm Lakers brainwashed, but I'll live with that. And the Suns, mainly just Chris Paul. He's my third favorite player of all time, especially on the Hornets days. Prime Chris Paul on the Hornets was absolutely different, and I'm taking him over a lot of your favorite point guards, but him, Devin Booker has that Hispanic heritage. There's some relatability there. And DeAndre Ayton, I always like the underrated players from a draft class that is absolutely stacked. So the Chris Bosches of the world, Ray Allen in '96, just those players I like to. I don't know if just quirky wouldn't be the word, but just liking the players that are just fly under the radar and have the impact. I think I just like that, and so you combine those three, and I'm just rooting it. And their uniforms, let me ask you this: if I got a Valley jersey, would that be bad? Because I really like those jerseys.
That would not be bad. Like I said, I have no problem with the Suns. If they had beat somebody else, they'd probably be the team that I'm rooting for to win this all. But it's simply the fact that they beat us, and I'm not interested in seeing Jay Crowder salsa dance on LeBron for the next 10 years. So that's just kind of my stance. That's just kind of my stance. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be so obnoxious in their parades. So
I would love that.
Let's just no. I don't even want to.
He's gonna trademark that. Make a shirt. That's gonna be his brand thing. I would love that because
Jay Crowder's new
Lakers.
logo will just be a silhouette of him like doing the salsa dance, and it'll be too petty and obnoxious for me to allow that to happen. So
I would love that. Although if the Clippers do win, just to transition out of this, then that would really set up the Battle of LA because then it's like you got this title, we got this title. Then finally,
I still don't agree. I think if the Clippers win this title, Lakers fans are just throwing in their face like, okay, well, 16 more to go. Like, this is not a battle for LA.
That's going to be something that happens. But for most NBA fans that aren't Lakers fans, it's going to be seen as like, all right, so they finally got their chips, both of them. Now, who's going to get the tiebreaker? And I mean, hopefully, the basketball gods can make a Battle of LA, specifically in the Western Conference Finals, happen. And finally, we can get the Battle of LA because, I mean, both teams have certainly not, I don't know, it's been complicated for that, but I would love to see the Battle of LA. Not with the Clippers winning the title, but it is what it is. In more recent news, the draft lottery was also yesterday, and the Lakers weren't involved. I can imagine times when the Lakers were involved, whether that be getting a top 2 pick, getting the number 4 pick, even with the AD trade, that was monumental because, I mean, technically DeAndre Hunter, Lakers legend, he was part of that Pelicans trade, and so I think that was the tipping line for the AD trade. So the lottery has been very important for Lakers history. Let's not deny that. But this year, with getting bounced out of the first round, they get an early 20s pick, and the lottery doesn't change that at all. I believe it only goes to 1 through 14, if I'm not mistaken. So, in terms of that, there was an interesting point that Richard Jefferson made where there's a domino effect with these lottery picks, but I don't think any of them are really going to affect the Lakers. Maybe some of the rivals, like the Warriors getting, I believe, 7 or 6 and 14. That could be something, I guess, if you consider the Warriors technically a rival, but the Cade Cunningham is going to be in the East, presumably if the Pistons don't mess that up. So I'm assuming Mobley would be to the Rockets, but the Rockets, their rebuild is going to take a little bit more time. I do appreciate Steven Silas finally getting something to work with. KPJ is good. Christian Wood is good. I like that core, certainly. I was more cynical on the Rockets not getting that pick and the Thunder getting 2 picks, but it seems like tanking. The basketball gods do not like that. But in terms for the Lakers, they do have the number 22 pick, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll get into the draft stuff along the line as time passes, and we have some really good draft people to help us out on that because me and Dolos aren't exactly draft gurus, but we'll certainly familiarize ourselves with some of the prospects. I will say Chris Duarte is up there for me. If he wasn't 24, that'd be awesome, but what he presents, that'd be great. But I mean, what were some of your reactions to the lottery? You think anything really impacts the Lakers, or were you salty about maybe, I don't know, do you have any teams that you were somewhat rooting for to get a certain player?
Yeah, I was absolutely rooting for the Orlando Magic to end up with the first overall pick. I'm fine with Detroit. They deserved as well. But I think Orlando, for finally doing the rebuild and tearing down that Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, Fournier core that they've had forever now, it needed to stop. And the fact that they finally committed to I was so all in on them. Like, imagine Cade Cunningham there with like Markelle Fultz, big fan of Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, Chuma Okeke, the rookie that they had from a few years ago. I like that Magic team. I thought they should have got the first overall pick. They were robbed and dropped down to 5. I was anti-Houston keeping their pick, to be honest. So that happening is, disappointing, but it is what it is. Also, Minnesota should have kept their pick.
Yeah. I don't like the Warriors getting that, but the Warriors cannot draft for their lives outside of their Hall of Famers. They've been horrible at drafting, so I'll take my odds on that for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a very solid chance those picks end up traded. And to be honest, there's a very solid chance that the Lakers pick ends up traded. Because of draft rules, I believe the Stepien rule, we're not able to trade consecutive picks. Well, actually, I'm trying to figure out the timeline on this because we traded our pick last year. That was part of the Dennis Schroeder trade. But I believe that pick, we had to wait until we actually drafted the person who was. I think that ended up becoming Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah.
In last year's draft.
Timberwolves
So I'm not sure if we waited and like selected Jaden and then traded him, or if we just traded the pick. Because depending on what that situation is, we may or may not be able to trade this year's pick. We will be bringing in some draft people to help us talk about that. As we get closer to the draft. You already have someone that you've kind of locked in on. I'd have no problem drafting a 24-year-old, considering that we need people to contribute now. It's not like we're looking for a project anyway, and if that guy can shoot, I'm all in for bringing him in.
Yeah, Chris Duarte would be interesting. There's also some other prospects that I don't know their names off the dome. I do have to familiarize myself with that type of range. I know Ayo something with the last name, first name Ayo or Io. He's pretty good. I know Asher, he's a Nuggets fan. He likes them, so immediately I want the Lakers to rob him of that happiness, just to be petty. But yeah, it should be interesting. With the draft lottery, it is what it is at this point. You can put your hopes in this prospect, but I mean, usually with win now teams, especially with a win now team, with LeBron aging and AD kind of getting towards the peak of his prime, arguably, then yeah, you could say that. There's an argument to be made that there's more of a chance that it's just not gonna exist. And I mean, they could still draft Chris Duarte, but just not for their team. Like I said, DeAndre Hunter, Lakers legend. So maybe the Lakers are certainly good at drafting for themselves and for other teams. So transitioning a little bit more into Lakers news. We tried to sandwich this episode with like a little bit of toppings, with a little bit of some, whatever you put on a sandwich bread.
Yeah.
I don't judge you. Just a little bit of Lakers stuff. If you put mustard on a sandwich though, that's a little bit more questionable. But with the Lakers, yeah, we'll just talk about pure Lakers stuff.
You don't put mustard in your sandwiches?
It depends.
That would totally depend on like what type of meat you're using. And
I'm more of a burger with mustard. I don't like mustard in sandwiches. That's kind of disgusting. But if you do, I'm not going to judge you. You're just a little disgusting, personally.
Yeah, I was just going to say I feel judged anyway, but yeah, well, I'm not much of a burger guy, so you're being judged anyway.
That's even worse. Who doesn't like burgers? Anyways, this isn't a food pod. We are going to talk about recently with a lot of, maybe just one. I mean, Brad Stevens was fiending to trade Kemba. He was like, as soon as I get this job, I'm trading this guy, and that was some hilarious dialogue came out of that. But Kemba did get traded to the Thunder from the Celtics. The Celtics, I believe, got Moses Brown, who I do like a little bit, although I don't know how he fits into the center position for that team. They do get Al Horford, who they shipped to this, or I don't remember if they shipped or something with the Sixers. He didn't do that well with the Sixers. He went to the Thunder, then he got seeded for them to tank, and last night they didn't even get that many picks. So Al Horford is still good, but you may be asking, why does that matter to the Lakers? Well, with any, up there in age, not on a really good team, players, there's a lot of rumors that come out of that. And you had some people asking, well, Kemba he's a decent point guard. Injuries have certainly deterred his timeline, and some have been floating around the idea that Kuzma, we don't really like Kuzma, and one of the top destinations for him would be the Thunder, and I could agree on that point, but I wouldn't agree as far as having Kemba in return, because I personally, I don't know how you feel, I'll ask you, but I just feel like that'd be a lateral move, especially with Dennis Schroeder. You could make the argument that Kemba is better than him, but the money there is a little scary. It's in the mid-30s, and it's for a little bit longer than I'd like. Dennis Schroeder certainly fumbled the bag in terms of playing and betting on himself. I like that he betted on himself, but it just didn't work out for him. I don't know what type of money he would get, but a Dennis Schroeder and Kemba backcourt is not going to exist. The money is absolutely not there. So I just feel like it'd be a lateral move money-wise. injuries wise for Kemba, he's more injury prone than Dennis Schroeder. He has a lot more money to him, and I'm a big Kemba guy. I liked him on the Hornets, and I mean, I just, it's not the player. It's just the money attached, and just it doesn't really do that much. He's not a traditional point guard. He's more of a scoring point guard, and I don't know. How do you feel if about the Kemba and Kuz news? And I wouldn't like Kuz being in that package either, for sure.
Yeah. So to be honest, I didn't really see much noise about Kemba coming to the Lakers. Until I saw you had it in the outline, and then I went to immediately look up Kemba Walker's contract from there. But I was surprised. I was surprised to find out that after next season, he has 1 year left on the deal. Actually, it's just a player option. So it's this next season, and a player option that he's obviously going to take because it's for
exactly.
Close to $38 million. But I'm in total agreement with you on the point that it's not the most ideal contract. It's also be pretty difficult to manage getting him over here. I think the avenue would really kind of rely on a Dennis Schroeder sign-in trade, and I don't know how willing he is. Yeah, I don't know how willing OKC is to bring him back in as well after they just traded him out. So from that perspective, there might just not even really be a purpose in talking about it. But I do think I'm a little interested at the idea of Kemba Walker on this roster because he didn't have a bad season last year, even with all the injury stuff. He didn't shoot the greatest from the field, but he was out there taking a high volume of 3-pointers. He took 8 a game, and he still made league average despite all the injury and being a down shooting gear for him. He is a guy that we can add and put in pick and roll, and Anthony Davis will be the best big man he's ever played with. Anthony Davis will give him additional space to get to his mid-range looks, for him to just come off screens and slide right into a 3. I think we sorely need that. Some pull-up shooting on this team would be amazing. I think even with the injury stuff, Kemba Walker, when he has the ball in his hands, is a threat to score. And I think just the way that can break defenses down, him being the guy that we choose to run pick and rolls with, teams aren't dropping against Kemba Walker like they did against Dennis Schroeder. So I would love to have that. I think it would change up the geography of our court offensively in a lot of ways that are really helpful. I just don't know how the trade gets done. I'm on the Trade Machine website right now and
I was gonna do that. That's think alike.
That's a tough number to trade for. If the Lakers,
just
they can manage it. Yeah, I'd be fine moving Kuzma in the deal. I'm higher on Kuzma than most of the Lakers discourse and consensus.
With you there. Yeah,
but his inconsistency in the playoffs is, we've had this discussion. It's made him more of a trade piece than a key core aspect of this team. Just because I think I love the shooting that he's advanced with. He's been making the right play more often, but I've lost faith in the jumper with him at times, and it's just maybe it's time to move on. So I think him at $13 million, I think that's a pretty good addition for Oklahoma City's roster, for them to add another forward that can defend a bit, could provide some scoring for them. Tough time making the deal work. I think we'd even probably have to throw in Caruso in a sign and trade, and there's just a lot we'd have to. There's just so much we'd have to do to make this work that I don't know.
Yeah, for Kemba, I'm just not gonna do that. And Caruso would be back with the Thunder. He was on their G League team, I think, or their summer league.
Yeah, he
team,
was.
So that would be a reunion.
That was his first year in the league in Oklahoma City Blue.
Yeah, so I just wouldn't do that personally for Kemba. I would like a Kyle Lowry. I'd rather have Kyle Lowry than Kemba. I don't know about you, especially on a championship team where he's proven for sure and a little more durable. Although the thing with Kyle Lowry is he's up there in age with LeBron, but there's just a disparity there. But it is what it is. But
yeah, I'm mixed on Kyle Lowry. I'm a fan of the guy. I think he could come in and also make an impact. He does a lot of the same pick and roll stuff, adds value as a shooter. But I'd need to see the contract before I can really give a take. And then at the same time, part of what's frustrated me about the discourse of all Lakers should have swung the Kyle Lowry trade at the deadline is that, like, again, we lost mainly because of injury, but at the same time, like, Kyle Lowry's a fantastic player, but we're not going to act like there aren't some playoff failures on his resume as well. He's not like that elite first ballot tier of guy that I think we just should sacrifice the timeline that AD should still need to maintain. Like, we still need to maintain some level of a roster for Anthony Davis once LeBron has really started to decline. So I think we would really be going all in when we're still contenders and, could be favorites to win as currently constructed. We just didn't get to see that because of injury.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't like the manifestation of LeBron declining, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Not speaking that into existence, he has like 5 more years in him.
Yeah, so I think we got the Dennis Schroeder in terms of what we think about him. I mean, has any of your opinion changed on whether he returns or not? I don't think there's a lot of implications as to why that would change, but do you feel, what are your percentages of like 65-35, yes or no?
So, to be honest, like, I've sat with this over the past few days, and I think it is kind of more likely he returns than he doesn't, just because there aren't a lot of great alternatives for guards. Like, even if Dennis Schroeder leaves, Trez declines his option, Marc Gasol retires, we don't clear up cap space. Like, these guys we kind of need those salary spots. So from that perspective, the Lakers are better off re-signing Schroeder, hopefully trying to make it as much of a value contract as they can, and fingers crossed that we can flip it at some point during the deal. There aren't a lot of great alternatives. Like, I'm not a huge Schroeder fan. I'd be fine with parting ways, but if you're telling me the alternative is to bring in one of these veteran minimum guards that are available in free agency, I'm going to lean towards having Schroeder instead.
Yeah, I'm a little more optimistic with Schroeder, although that kind of did not help towards the end of the year in terms of him somewhat building around. I keep emphasizing he thrives in the 6-man role, but with the Lakers politics and speaking of our daily dose of Drummond, right? He did reply to someone in his Instagram section where he was like, you better take that minimum or something. He's like, you're drunk. And like, if you legitimately thought he would take a minimum to come back, I mean, unless that's his only contract, then I could see that happening. But I don't think he's a minimum player at 27. So he brings some value to some teams. You can argue what that value is, but that's the daily dose of Drummond. Anyways, for another player that is certainly polarizing, I like my transition there. Ben Simmons, who we sort of alluded to a little bit earlier in the playoff section, the NBA Twitter will, with any player having a bad game, the overreactions are certainly comedical. I think it got a little more than just jokes at one point. That was a little concerning, especially with Philly. Philly has polarizing fans for a polarizing player. They're a different breed up there for sure. But man, that was a little concerning to see, especially when it seemed a little more personal than it should have. They're basketball players at the end of the day. Like, you're bringing in relationships and all that. It got a little weird, but Simmons, let me ask you this: do you think he's going to get traded this offseason specifically?
Yes, I just feel like there's no way you don't end this offseason without trading him. The relationship, I think, is just too messed up. And even if you what's the point of bringing him back? We've
seen trade value up,
I suppose, but do you really want to bring this roster into next season?
I think the continuity that would come with him being back and then having to adjust towards the trade deadline for a contender, that's certainly not ideal. Like, I wouldn't wait for that, especially if you know you're going to trade him and you've pretty much given up on him. And I just don't see him. I think he just needs a new look. A lot of people have been saying that's kind of like the cliche. He just needs a new place. And I had envisioned a future. I had a dream, not really, but where the Wolves got Cade Cunningham, They traded for, it'd be a starting lineup of Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, Ben Simmons, and Cat. That would have been disgusting, but two of those players are probably not going to go there. One guaranteed in Cade, but I don't know. I think the hard thing with Simmons is his value. If you look on Twitter, you'd think his value would be with the likes of a G League player. He's valuable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He brings a lot to the table, especially for contending teams. Now the issue is what contending team is going to take that contract, because that is the biggest issue, is his contract with a lot of players where they have value, but you look at that money and you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with that? And so I just don't think he's going to end up on a contender if he is traded. I think it'd be on a middle of the pack team or a lower tier team. I just don't know what team is really putting the cards on the deck for a Ben Simmons trade. That's not to say that his value is that low. It's just the market is a little odd, especially after one of the worst playoff performances. Well, that's
yeah. No, I think that was one of the worst playoff performances. Yeah, I'm a Ben guy, but the fact that he took 3 field goals in the fourth quarter in that entire series, that's awful. That you cannot be an all NBA, like all-star level player and have 3 field goals over the course of a 7-game series. I have a Ben Simmons video that's gonna come out later today. So I've expressed a lot of my thoughts about Ben in that one. I think it's really just best for that both sides to part ways in this situation. A lot of Philly fans have taken it personal, and I kind of sympathize with them. They've been the people supporting and rocking with Ben Simmons the most since he's been drafted. They've defended him through the non-shooting stuff. They wild out every time he would take a jumper, and I have some leeway for them being really upset and expressing that to Ben Simmons. Keep it about basketball, though. There's no reason for this to ever become personal.
It should.
But at the same, in the process of doing this video, I was watching his career high game where he dropped 40 against Utah, and he just looked like a different player. He's just so much of a different player when he's aggressive, when he's actually driving into open spaces and not afraid of him getting fouled, and then he's going to end up having to be at the free throw line. There was so much about this series that was mental, and that is concerning long term, because it's been years and his game has not progressed offensively to the point where you want it to be. And if there's a mental block aspect of this, there is at least a legitimate possibility that that's not something that can be fixed. But, another team, if you're watching the tape, this is still an all NBA level defender. And, for everything we say about him not shooting threes, since he was drafted into the league, he has had the most assisted 3-point field goals in the league. Not LeBron, not James Harden, not Jokic. It's been Ben Simmons. And this has been on teams that don't space the floor well. This has been on teams that have started Josh Richardson, Al Horford, Jimmy Butler, guys who aren't shooting the 3 very well. And Ben Simmons has been getting assists consistently on 3-point field goals. So there's something to say for how good this guy is. There are obviously adjustments that he needs to make, and he needs to look inward and figure some things out about himself. But a team should take a shot. I think it's mostly going to be difficult because any team that I think should be considering a Ben Simmons trade, teams like, you hit it on the nail. Minnesota is the team that I would most love to make a trade for him. I think it would start with Malik Beasley and D'Angelo Russell. Sixers fans might not love that return, but
that's the best I think they can do. D'Angelo Russell is the best.
Yeah, I think it helps both sides. CJ McCollum is also an option. They just really need a ball handler. And part of Simmons' issue, we don't have to go too in depth with this because, like I said, I have a video coming out on it, and this is a Lakers podcast. You also want to point out, I don't think there's any chance he gets traded to the Lakers. One, contract size.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, you're hyping him up. You're getting me hyped up a little bit, but you just crush our hopes, I guess.
yeah. The contract size is tough. That'd be difficult to swing. Also, I don't think Philly's celebrating over a return of KCP and Kuzma. Like, that would not be enough for them.
That doesn't benefit them at all.
Yeah,
There's nothing
that does not keep Embiid happy. Whatever they get as a return in Ben Simmons trade has to make Embiid happy. You're not gonna keep that Sixers team competitive by trading Ben Simmons for draft picks. So you need somebody who comes in and fills a need. Like, maybe you're not getting an all-star level player back because of Simmons' value dropping. Like, CJ's not an all-star, but he fits a team need for them to the point where it's like, maybe that's more important. And so that's just kind of how I feel about Ben Simmons.
Yeah. Question. I got a question for you, okay? Mm-hmm. Would you rather for next year have Kemba Walker or Ben Simmons? Although neither are going to happen. You'd rather have Kemba Walker?
I'd rather have Kemba. Because the Lakers are already a team that has elite defense. I think we can do a lot to cover up for Kemba. Offense is clearly what we need more of. We need more scorers. We need more three-point shooters. I think Kemba running pick and roll with Anthony Davis would be amazing. Like, we could anchor our bench lineups with when LeBron sits and actually stagger those two and let them run the bench so the offense isn't dying out all the time. I'd love that. Ben Simmons can't anchor a bench, and that was part of Philly's problem, that they couldn't really stagger him and Simmons and Embiid very well because Simmons was not going to carry your bench units with his offensive struggles. So I'd rather have Kemba.
All right, well, yeah, I guess, but like we said, we just don't really envision that happening, and I think Ben Simmons that'd be kind of weird with him and LeBron. It wouldn't be such a weird fit, but it'd be like you kind of have the same player. Not really. I say that like lightly, very, very lightly, because they're certainly not the same player. Like, if Simmons had the aggression of Patrick Beverley, I think he'd be he definitely would be up there. But like, Giannis is basically Simmons, a Greek form of Simmons, but with mad confidence. And I do think with Simmons, just one last note about Simmons, I do think it's the confidence is, at that point, it might be a little bit outside of basketball, and I do wish the best for him, and I do think just a change of scenery is best at this point. I don't think, especially with how Glenn Rivers, as he likes to be called, and Joel Embiid, the way they sounded, they just sounded like they were done, and I think that's just burning the bridges. There's just no way, unless he comes into a workout with the Sixers after 2 months of meditating and shooting and looks like Curry out there. I just don't think that's just a road to be taken. But speaking of Curry, now that I mentioned Curry, I'm killing it, bro. I'm literally killing transition it. Game. I'm killing it. There was some news between Joe Lacob. I've never the J and the Lacob are throwing me off with that name. But Joe Lacob, who is a Warriors owner, I think. Yeah. Is he the owner?
Yeah, he's the owner.
Yeah, I don't think they're yet. So he's basically had some pretty bad quotes, if you're a Warriors fan. And this is more of like our delusional section where Curry and LeBron magically team up. This is just more of like, well, you might want to keep your eye out on this if somehow the dominoes fall that way. But Joe Lacob has had some not great quotes where he's basically treated Curry as like not something to be like you could just let go, but he's not been the owner like Jeannie Buss. If she were to say, let's just put that into perspective, well, we'll see with LeBron, we'll see at the end of it. Could you pull up the quote? Could you say that? Could you quote?
Yeah. So for the people who know the quote, Joe Lacob had this to say to ESPN's Brian Windhorst. Look, Steph Curry, if he really wanted to leave at the end of his contract, he's a free agent. He's earned the right. He can do it. I said that with Kevin Durant. I'm still friends with Kevin Durant, and I still really like him. And I always love him for what he did for this franchise. By the way, he took less money when he played here. He really helped us. We were able to get a couple of other players. Players don't usually do that, and he did that. So I have great respect and admiration for that, for Kevin. And I would for Steph, no matter what he does too. He's done a lot for us. We've done a lot for him. I would hope that we provide the environment for him that he wants to be here for the rest of his.
So within that quote, I'm getting vibes as you read it again. The guy's not confident. Like, if you're gonna, it just sounds like a 3-year early farewell speech. Mm-hmm. Like, Curry leaving would certainly have to go terribly wrong for him to actually leave. And I mean, I don't know. Like, the only connection really there is that people are like have the dream of Curry going to the Lakers. That trio would certainly be deadly, with LeBron getting at that point a fully gray beard and Bronny being a few years from the league. But I mean, really, I think the thing to be taken out of it, if you want to think Curry is going to the Lakers, I personally would not invest myself too much into that because my dreams would be crushed at that point. But I think just the way ownership treats their star players, I think just to make this about the Lakers, there's just a different precedent being set with Jeanie Buss and that, and it's a time to be grateful that we don't get quotes about LeBron, although LeBron is certainly a different situation with the type of mobility he's had with teams, whereas Curry has been the franchise player for the longest. And I don't know, like, I think a better comparison would be like if Jeanie Buss were to say like, AD, yeah, we signed him to this extension, but we'll see at the end of the contract and decide. Like, no, you want to be a bit more confident with that. And I mean, that's the most to be taken out of that. I don't think there's more.
My real takeaway from this quote, like, and that I'm really just cringing at, is it really just seems like Joe Lacob is trying to set Steph up to ask him to take less on this next contract.
Yes, the pay cut.
Bringing up the whole Kevin Durant thing, like, oh, Kevin Durant took a pay cut, and like that's just unnecessary. Like, give Steph the maximum amount of money because he's still worth more than that. Like, the Steph Curry took this franchise from being a relative unknown, undiscussed, to being the most valuable in the league. Like, they're more valuable than the Lakers. Part of that is because of real estate and owning that new Chase Center arena. But that owner has made so much money because of Steph Curry. And then to ask him to take a pay cut when for back-to-back seasons, like, you failed him and he's missed the playoffs. There's some context and nuance to the 2020 season, but like, the Warriors' failures were on ownership and management to a degree this past season, and for a quote like this to come out is some nasty stuff. Like, this is not good at all. And the Kevin Durant reference, like, me and Kevin Durant are still like,
that's weird.
People need to stop putting microphones in front of the Warriors owner, because I remember from I think it was either the first or second title that they won, and it was during their parade, and they're asking one of the owners about Kevin Durant's free agency, and he said this jokingly, but was joking about the fact that Kevin Durant was the free agent that they brought in, and like, Steph Curry was their guy, and he was going to get a blank contract, and he gets to write whatever he wants, and we're going to have to figure things out with Kevin. And it was like, this is a bad quote. This is a awful quote to have at your championship parade. Like, this quote won't mean anything if Steph ends up re-signing and he stays with. But if he does leave, people are going to point to this quote and say, like regardless of whether he ends up coming to the Lakers or not, that's not relevant. If he decides he wants to go back home to Charlotte, to his hometown, and team up with LaMelo Ball, people will point to this quote and be like, Joe Lacob messed up, and he's the reason Steph's not a Warrior anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's very significant that KD, who let's put this into perspective. Yes, he got injured with his Achilles prior to AD coming to the Lakers, but at that point they were seen as a favorite. So the fact that he is on a title favorite, and the animosity that comes with KD and title favorites is hilarious. But in a serious note, like, he left a title favorite to do, like, you know how much the ownership or front office has to mess up for your, like, best player, not your franchise player, but like your franchise player B to leave. I don't know. There's signs that's pointing to where like it's not the most ideal and perfect place as it seems to be, and I think if the Warriors, I think it's far more into the line, but I do like how you pointed out where there certainly seems to be an illusion of a pay cut, and if I'm Curry, why would I do that? Like, I think that's the most we're gonna talk about Mr. Joe Lacob for quite a while, but if we want to manifest Curry going to the Lakers, that would be awesome, but that's way down the line. By the time, I don't know, Bronny is in the league or something, just think about that timeline, but it is what it is. But for the final touch, we have been repeating that we're sandwiching the Lakers content, and so for the end, we're just going to get a little bit of the predictions for the rest of the playoffs, because, well, not the rest of the playoffs, just the conference finals, just to be able to spit a little bit more about basketball, and have a little bit more diversity within the talk. But who do you have coming out today as of recording? Although I don't think this will be released today, as of recording, who do you have the Sixers, or not the Sixers, the Hawks and the Bucks? I'm interested in that one. Although I can probably predict who you have.
Yeah, so game one is today. So you, as a listener, you'll probably know the results by the time you hear this. But I think the Bucks are going to win this. They've had some rest after they finished up their 7-game series. I think they just have too many mismatch issues that Atlanta won't be able to deal with, particularly with DeAndre Hunter out. I think they win the series, but I also think they pick up this game one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just get a game one and they get gentlemen swept. But for the memes, I would say Hawks in 7. That would be hilarious. But seeing the Hawks in the finals, if they win the title and my MVP pick is half true, that would be certainly hilarious, and it would be the biggest twist, probably the biggest Cinderella story of the NBA's history, but in modern history. I don't know my 60s knowledge like that, but I do think that'd be quite the thing to witness, especially if the Hawks beat the Suns or something like that. But yeah, if I want to be realistic and logical, then I would take the Bucks, and I'd say 6. I do think the Hawks are going to put up 2 on them, just because I think Bud is quite the conundrum, but it is what it is. I do have the Bucks in 6. Who is your, just to play on more, we're not going to do the words just because, like, once you get to 5 words, there's some analysis to be taken out of that, but what do you think the biggest X factor in terms of the series would be for each team?
For each team, I think Clint Capella is the biggest X factor for well, actually, no, let me take that back. I think John Collins is the biggest X factor for Atlanta, because I think Clint Capella is going to be getting the Giannis assignment, making John Collins more of a help defender. He's going to be likely asked to be rotating weak side and more of a rim protector. He's undersized. He hasn't been that great at the 5 because of defensive problems. So this will be a very interesting series for him and could impact his free agency negotiations, although I don't think Atlanta's in a great negotiating position, considering he's a key piece of a team that made the conference finals for them. They kind of have to bring him back. But, this will be a very interesting Collins series for me. On the Bucks side of things, I think their X factor is going to be Drew Holiday in this one. In the 2 series that the Hawks have had to go through prior, there hasn't been an elite guard with, ball handling abilities on the Knicks or on the Sixers. So nobody was ever really able to punish Trae Young and attack him out at the top of the key and just really go at him. That's part of why Atlanta was able to get away with running awful defensive backcourt of Trae Young and Lou Williams. That's not going to be possible in this series because Drew Holiday will be going at them. Chris Middleton exists. So I think Holiday is probably more the X factor, though, in this week.
Yeah. I'm going to go with, you alluded a little bit to the Capella. I'd have him at 2nd as the X factor. I'm going to go a little more random with this one and have Lemon Pepper Lou Williams as the biggest X factor. And I think the Hawks, although their chances are slim and they have kind of defied all those odds, I do think their biggest factor in terms of winning against the Bucks would be their bench would have to go insane, because I do think one of the bigger advantages that the Hawks have is their bench depth and their ability to score. And I think Lou Williams having those games where he is lemon pepper Lou, then I think that's important for them to just get those decisive wins that are very important in achieving 4 wins to win the series. And Clint Capella, I do see him as the matchup for Giannis. Onyeka Okongwu as well. He has more versatility than Clint Capella, but that'd be quite the rookie moment to be matched up with Giannis in the conference finals. But I'm not doubting Double O. But
big facts.
It is
Double O thing.
Yeah, and so for the Bucks, I would say Chris Middleton would be the biggest X factor, just because I think he's gonna have to take advantage of that John Collins matchup. And surprisingly, John Collins has become a good defensive player throughout the playoffs. That's not an insult. It's just like that hasn't really been his mold throughout his career, but he has become that. And I think if he can just free up his own matchup, then that certainly does open up for the rest of the players, because usually when Chris Middleton is having a good game, you can guarantee the Bucks will win that game. So I think Drew Holiday would be the more rational pick, just because of his importance in terms of guarding Trae Young and kind of taking advantage of that matchup. But I guess I'll go a little different. But for the Western Conference, wait, so you had Bucks in how many?
I have Bucks in 5 or 6.
Okay. So for the Western Conference, I do have Bucks in 6 to 7. But who do you have for the Western Conference, where it is up 2-0? So it's kind of weird being up 2-0 in one series and one hasn't even started. But scheduling, I guess.
Yeah. It's kind of the obvious pick since the series is 2-0. I don't think the Clippers are going to manage to come back from down 0-2 once more, especially with no Kawhi. So I do have the Suns winning this. I think it's going to be in 4 or 5 games. Just the Clippers don't have Kawhi. I don't think they have the firepower. Morris also seems like he's dealing with some kind of nagging injury. And at this point, you're just really relying on that Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson playoff run of their lives to continue. So the Suns have more answers than the Clippers do, and that's why this series is probably going to be a bit short-lived.
Yeah, I could see it somehow going to 6 if Kawhi reemerges from his chamber, but the Suns in 4 would be good for the prophecy and the Suns in 4 guy, but I'm leaning more towards 5 or 6 just because I like to give a little bit of leeway, especially to the 0-2 Clippers who love to be in compromising positions. But did you say your biggest X factors for each team?
Oh yeah, so the biggest X factor for the Clippers, I'd say, is Reggie Jackson. Just because, especially no Kawhi, like they need other scoring threats. They need people who are going to run the pick and roll, and Reggie Jackson's been that option. I think Paul George he'll do Paul George things. He'll play defense. The shot making will come for the most part. It wasn't really there for him in game 2, but that doesn't diminish the fantastic game one he had. It's kind of sad that Reggie Jackson is their X factor, but it's worked for them for 2 straight rounds. So let's see if it does this time. As far as the Suns' X factor, it has to be DeAndre Ayton. He was the X factor for this team overall coming into the playoffs. We've now seen 2 consistent rounds of good play from DeAndre Ayton. So I've heard Doris Burke even say, like, there's no way Ayton is an X factor anymore. We know what he's going to contribute. But I'd still pick him as the X factor in this series because he is the guy that forces the Clippers to try and go big to match up. They aren't really able to punish the small ball thing, like push the small ball thing for LA the same way they were able to against the Jazz, because Ayton does have the ability to punish that on the other end. I'm not going to say he's a great post scorer, but like he's good enough that, like, if Nicholas Batum and Patrick Beverly are on him consistently, like, those are good shots for him. So, at the end of the day, I think that is going to make a difference and force the Clippers to keep Zubac out there, or Boogie Cousins will continue getting minutes.
Yeah, I'd say as far as my X factors, I'd go. I was gonna say Zubac, but the matchups, I don't even know if he's gonna get like playoff minutes in the vital parts. You saw what happened when he got picked apart by Devin Booker on that last play with DeAndre Ayton, which was an absolute confusing play to watch, especially with other people. I watched it with some other basketball people. They were like, "Wait, what?" And so yeah, it was an odd thing. But my biggest X factor for the the Suns would be, I mean, you kind of stole the Ayton one, but I can appreciate that. I would say, I don't know, it's a little hard, but whoever is guarding Paul George, I'll leave it at that. You can say Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges, a tie between those two. I think that's very important to just keep him from achieving the true playoff P form. And I think that's just important. I think that's an obvious one just because he's their best player at this moment. And we really don't know what's happening with Kawhi. But I'd go with those picks, 1 to 2 picks for the Suns. I don't know if that's cheating, but you can interpret it as you will. But the Clippers, I mean, it's a little rough. They are... Who did you say for the Clippers? I forgot.
Reggie Jackson.
Right. Okay. That's probably a forgettable one. But yeah, Reggie Jackson... I mean, he's a solid pick, I guess. He's been insane ever since Goggles. Reggie Jackson has been different, but I don't know. It's gonna take a. I wouldn't put money on Man repeating his things. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, I was on a Zubac tandem, but I just don't know how he's gonna match up with Ayton. I don't know. That's a little more. Maybe. I'll go with the obvious one. I'll just go with Paul George, I guess. Because he's technically an X factor in the playoffs. He's not as bad as some people will tell you. I will tell you that. That's just more of a meme. But I do think he is very important. You saw what happened. Even when he had an okay game in Game 2, they were still in the competition. However, if Chris Paul does come back, I wouldn't count too much on him having a bad game and still being in the game. But if he can fully embrace his role that he was in for that stretch of like a week, the Clippers do have somewhat of a chance, in my opinion. And if you can stretch it to maybe Game 6 or 7, it does seem like Kawhi isn't completely out. So if you can somehow stretch it to that, then I think you put the Clippers in the best position to come back 0-2 for the third time. But do you have anything else to say about the playoffs or the Lakers as we wrap it up?
Yeah, just final point on that series and total agreement. The longer it goes, the more it favors the Clippers. If it's a short series, it's, in the Suns' favor, they can wrap this up even without Chris Paul. My last thought of the pod is please stop giving Chris Paul credit for everything that the Phoenix Suns accomplished.
Yeah.
The man is Chris Paul. He's literally in LA right now. He's not with the team. He's at home with his family recovering from the coronavirus. Please just give Campaign, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton credit for the growth and, amazing play that they've had.
The spirit of Chris Paul helped the team out. I do like that analysis. I'll turn my shoulder I'll turn a shoulder on that just because of how Chris Paul biased I am, but it is a little ridiculous where Booker, it would be even more ridiculous to where it got to the point of Finals MVP voting if we're gonna go that far, where Chris Paul is he gets the Iguodala treatment, but I don't think Chris Paul is gonna play like that, in my opinion. But if that does stretch to the Finals MVP, I will turn my shoulder only because it's Chris Paul. But I know a lot of people will be mad if Booker has the numbers, and I don't know. It's certainly a spectacle to see the Chris Paul stretches by a lot of analysis. But for the ending part, we do want to promote a little bit. I will for sure be I'm going to be making a Suns video. Again, you can see a pattern that I really do like the Suns team, but it's going to be about a player that last name rhymes with Looker. I'm making a video about that. I don't know how soon that'll be out. I've had a lot of I want to get back into it, but it some of the videos, it's a lot of work for that. But do be on the lookout for that. Do be on the lookout for the Ben Simmons video that Dolos will make. I know you were a little hesitant to make that, but I don't know if I was the convincing voice, but if I can...
you definitely pushed me into making it.
If I'm a contributor of the kind of being against the wave of a lot of mainstream stuff, like you don't really see a player or a person saying, well, Ben Simmons is still good after he had that performance where everyone was trashing on him. So being a little different is very good, especially in the YouTube community. But if you did make it this far, you're awesome. If you want to show how awesome you are, it'd be great if you could leave us some 5 stars, a good review here and there. Just ignore the Clippers analysis for sure if you want to leave that in the review. But yeah, we appreciate you. Hopefully no one else on the Lakers gets arrested. Hopefully. But yeah, that about does it. Any last words before we wrap it up?
Nothing but free AC.
Free AC, baby. Yeah, thank you for listening. See ya.